Navy SEAL opens truck door for freezing dog family. What happens next melts hearts. The man who once called in airstrikes could not drive past a shivering dog. The cold came in through the truck window before Marcus even rolled it down. He had been driving for 11 hours straight and the heater was making that rattling sound again, and the exit for Bozeman was still 40 miles out. He almost did not see them. They were pressed against the concrete barrier on the shoulder of the highway, a mother dog and what looked like 4 small shapes tucked under her belly. The mother's head was low. Her eyes were open, but barely. The snow around her was packed flat from how long she had been lying there. Marcus did not think about it, he just pulled over. That was the thing about Marcus Deal that nobody at the hardware store in Billings ever knew. He did not think first, he never had, he just moved. He had been working at Tilden Brothers Hardware for 2 years and 3 months. He knew where every bolt was. He knew how to mix paint to match a color just by looking at it. He knew which customers were having a bad week without them saying a single word, and he knew how to talk them through a project so they left the store feeling like they could actually do it. His manager Dale thought Marcus was the best floor associate he had ever hired. Patient, quiet, never came in late, never left early. Never complained about the Saturday morning shift that nobody else wanted. What Dale did not know was that Marcus had once planned and executed a hostage rescue in a building with no functioning lights, no reliable floor plan, and 6 armed men between the door and the target. What Dale did not know was that Marcus had done that twice. Marcus did not tell people things like that. There was no point. That life was behind him, and he had decided it was behind him, and the decision felt clean most mornings. Most mornings he drove the 16 miles from his rented trailer to the store, and he listened to whatever talk radio the previous driver had left the dial on, and he drank his coffee from the same blue thermos, and he did not think about Kandahar or Mosul or the name of the kid who had been standing 2 feet to his left when the IED went off on the road outside Ramadi. He did not think about those things. He was good at not thinking about things. The hardware store was warm and it smelled like sawdust and machine oil, and Marcus liked that. He liked that customers came in with a specific problem and left with a specific solution. He liked that the problem was always the same size as the solution. Nothing was ever bigger than it needed to be. He liked that about the place. In December, Dale had promoted a 23-year-old named Kevin to shift supervisor. Kevin had a business degree and a loud laugh, and he called Marcus Bud in a way that landed differently than he probably intended. When Kevin reorganized the stockroom Marcus had spent 4 years building the logic for, Marcus did not say anything. When Kevin told a customer the wrong load rating for a floor anchor, and Marcus quietly corrected it without making it a moment, Kevin glanced at him with something that was not quite annoyance and not quite gratitude, and Marcus let it go completely. He went back to the paint desk and helped an older woman match the exact color of her kitchen from 1987, using a scrap of paper she had been carrying in her purse for 6 months. That was a Tuesday, and by Thursday Marcus had forgotten the whole thing with Kevin. He had learned somewhere in his early 30s that the amount of energy you spent being bothered by people who did not matter was energy you could not use for anything else. It was a simple math, and once you saw it clearly you could not unsee it. But the drive to Bozeman for his cousin Rena's wedding was the first long drive Marcus had taken in almost 8 months, and something about the highway opened something up in him. The flat white of the fields, the sky so low it felt like a ceiling. He was tired in a way that was different from regular tired, and he could not name it exactly. He pulled the truck onto the shoulder behind the dogs. The mother raised her head when his door opened. Her ears went back. She was a cattle-dog mix, black and tan with a white chest, and she was thin in the way that said this had been going on for a while. 2 of the shapes under her were moving. One of them made a sound so small Marcus almost thought he imagined it. One of them was not moving at all. He stopped 6 feet away. He crouched down so he was at her level, and he did not move. The wind came off the fields, and the temperature on his truck said 11 degrees, and he stayed low and waited. She watched him. She did not growl. That told him something. He had no blanket. He had no food. He had a jacket in the back seat and a half-empty bag of beef jerky from a gas station in Livingston, and he was 40 miles from anything. He thought about what he had and what he needed and how long this was going to take, and none of that changed what he did next. He went back to the truck and got the jacket and the jerky, and he came back and he sat down on the ground in 11-degree weather on the shoulder of Interstate 90, and he tore the jerky into small pieces, and he held one piece out flat on his palm, and he waited again. She watched him for 40 seconds, he counted. Then she stood up slowly and walked to his hand and took the piece of jerky and went back to her pups. The one that was not moving was a male, maybe 8 weeks old. Marcus picked him up and held him against his chest under his flannel shirt and felt the pup's body temperature against his skin, and the pup's legs moved once and Marcus breathed out slowly through his nose. His phone had one bar. He tried 3 times before he got through to Renee. She answered on the second ring. He said where he was and what he had found, and Renee said nothing for a moment, and then she said, "There's an emergency vet in Bozeman. I'll pull up the address." She had always been quick like that. No drama, just the next thing. He said he was going to need something warmer than his jacket, and she said, "I'll meet you at the exit." He said, "I might be a while." She said, "Marcus, I know." He got the mother into the back seat. This took 11 minutes and required him to sit in the truck with the door open and the jerky between them, and to never once reach for her, only let her come to him, only let her decide, because some things you cannot force, and if you try you lose everything. When she finally stepped up into the back seat, she shook hard once from the cold, and then she curled around the 3 living pups, and the male against Marcus's chest pushed his nose into the warmth of Marcus's shirt pocket. Marcus drove. He kept the heat at full. His left hand was on the wheel and his right hand was pressed against the lump under his shirt where the pup was breathing in short, fast breaths that got steadier as the miles went by. He had not told anyone where he was going for the first 16 minutes after he pulled off the shoulder. He had just started moving and figured the rest out as he went, which was not different from how he had done most things that mattered in his life. The emergency vet in Bozeman was called Mountain West Animal Urgent Care, and it sat in a strip mall between a smoothie place and a tax preparer. The fluorescent sign out front buzzed. The parking lot had been plowed but not salted, and Marcus walked carefully across the ice with the pup in both hands now, the mother on a piece of paracord he had found in his glove compartment, the other 3 pups wrapped in his jacket in the crook of his left arm, and Renee walking beside him holding the door open before he even asked. The vet tech who came to the desk was named Amy, and she had a stud in her nose, and she looked at what Marcus was carrying and she said, "Come on back right now, all 5 of you." The exam room was warm, bright. It smelled like disinfectant and something underneath it that was almost sweet. Renee stood by the wall. Marcus put the pups down on the metal table and the mother jumped up after them without being asked, and Amy said in a low voice to no one in particular, "She's a good mom." The male pup lay still on the table while Amy worked. She was efficient. She did not narrate what she was doing. She had warm towels from somewhere and she wrapped him and she checked his gums and she put a tiny mask near his face, and Marcus watched her hands. He knew what he was watching. He had watched hands like that before, not the same work, different tools, different purpose, but the same quality of movement, no wasted motion, no performance, just the next thing and then the next thing, and the attention completely inside the task. He did not say anything. After a while, Amy looked up. The male's legs were moving, pushing against the towel. She said, "He's fighting, that's a good sign." She said the mother is dehydrated and underweight, but her temp is okay. She protected them well. She said 3 of the pups look pretty good, cold, stressed, but not in danger. She said the little male needs to stay through the night. Marcus said, "What does that cost?" She said she'd get him the numbers in a minute, and then she looked at him over the pup and she said, "Where did you find them?" He told her the mile marker. She said, "How long were they out there?" He said he did not know, long enough. She looked at him again, the kind of look that was measuring something. She said, "Are you keeping them?" Marcus looked at the mother dog who had her chin resting on the side of the table and was watching him with amber eyes in the fluorescent light. He had been living in a rented trailer with a no pets clause for 2 years and 3 months. He said, "I might need a few days to figure that out." Renee made a small sound from the wall that was not quite a laugh. The vet who came in 10 minutes later was named Dr. Felsen, a compact woman in her 50s with short gray hair and reading glasses pushed up on her forehead. She checked everything Amy had done and added 2 things, and then she asked Marcus the same question Amy had asked about where he found them, and then she said something that stopped him. She said someone left them there. Marcus said, "What do you mean?" She said mother dogs with newborn pups do not walk to highways. She said the mother's paws showed no cracking consistent with long-distance travel. She said whoever owned her drove her out there and left her. The room was quiet except for the hum of the equipment. Renee said from the wall, "That is evil." Dr. Felsen said it happens more than people want to know. Marcus put his hand flat on the table near the mother dog without touching her. She moved her chin from the table edge and put it on his hand. The weight of it was small. He looked at the male pup in the towel, his legs moving, his tiny chest rising and falling under the heat lamp. He thought about the highway, the concrete barrier, the shape of her pressed against the cold with all four of them underneath her. He thought about how she had not moved from that spot, not to find food, not to find shelter. She had just stayed there covering them and waiting for something she had no reason to believe was coming. Marcus said to no one in particular. Quietly, she stayed with them. Dr. Felsen said yes. She said that is what they do. He paid for everything that night. This was not something he announced. He went to the front desk while Renaa sat with the dogs in the exam room, and he gave the woman at the desk his card and he said, whatever it costs tonight and whatever it costs tomorrow, run it on this. The woman at the desk looked at the card and then at him. She said, are you sure? He said yes. She said, is that going to be okay? He said it will be. He had money saved, 2 years and 3 months of working Saturdays and not spending much. He did not know what he was saving it for. Now he did. When he came back to the exam room, Renaa had the smallest of the 3 healthy pups in her lap and she was talking to it very quietly. She looked up. She said, how are you doing? He said, fine. She said, Marcus. He said, Renaa. She looked at him for a moment. She said, you know you don't have to be fine all the time. He looked at the mother dog on the table, who was clean now and had been given fluids and had eaten a small amount of food from a metal bowl Amy had brought in. The 3 healthy pups were nursing. The male was under his lamp, legs moving, pushing. Marcus said, I know. He stayed until midnight. The vet tech on the overnight shift was named Jordan, a young man with tired eyes who promised to call if anything changed with the male. Marcus gave him his cell number twice and spelled his last name both times. In the parking lot, the temperature had dropped to 4 degrees. His breath made clouds. The smoothie place was dark. The tax preparer was dark. Renaa stood beside him. She said, you're going to take them home, aren't you? He said, I have a no pets clause. She said, I know what you have. He looked up at the sky, which was black and clear and full of stars in a way it only gets when it is very cold. He said, I need to talk to my landlord. Renaa said, I'll be your reference. He said, you live in Seattle. She said, I have a phone. He did not smile, but something in his face changed in a way that Renaa recognized from when they were children and he had decided something. The decision was already made. He was just finishing the part where he said it out loud. He said, I'll come back in the morning. She said, okay. He said, tell nobody about this. She said, too late. He started to say something and stopped. She held up her phone. The photo she had taken in the parking lot of the highway, Marcus crouching in 11-degree weather on the shoulder of I-90 holding a pup against his chest with 3 more wrapped in his jacket, had been live for 6 minutes. 47 shares, comments coming in from people she did not know. Someone had already found the original post and added the mile marker and was asking if anyone recognized the family of dogs. Marcus looked at the phone. He looked at Renaa. She said, you're already a story. He said, Renaa. She put the phone away. She said, I know. She said, let's go get some sleep. He drove back to her house in the dark, 4 degrees, heater rattling, the passenger seat empty and the back seat empty, and the smell of the mother dog still on his jacket, which was sitting on the seat beside him. Jordan called at 3:40 in the morning. Marcus was awake. Jordan said the male was nursing on his own. He said the little guy had a strong grip. He said in all his time there he had never seen a pup that far down come back that fast. Marcus sat on the edge of the guest bed in Renaa's house with the phone to his ear in the dark. He said, thank you. Jordan said, I thought you'd want to know. Marcus said yes. He sat there after he ended the call. The room was dark. The house was quiet. He could hear the heat cycling through the vents. He thought about the mother dog on the highway pressing her body against the concrete barrier in 11 degrees covering 4 pups she could not warm enough and refusing to move, refusing to leave, refusing to accept that no one was coming. He thought about what it took to believe in something that had given you no reason to believe. He thought about the mile marker. He thought about Kevin reorganizing the stockroom. He thought about Dale, who thought he was the best floor associate he had ever hired and did not know and did not need to know the rest of it. He thought about Ramadi. He let himself think about it for 3 seconds. That was his rule. 3 seconds and then you put it back. He had held to that rule for a long time. He put it back. He lay down in the dark in the guest room in Rena's house, and he looked at the ceiling and he thought about the trailer and the no pets clause and what the landlord was like and whether there was any chance of making it work. He thought about 5 dogs. He had never owned a dog in his life. He fell asleep before he could think about it long enough to talk himself out of it. In the morning, Rena's post had been shared 14,000 times. Someone had found the hardware store. Someone had found Dale. Dale had been interviewed on the phone by a woman from a local news station in Billings and had said, and Marcus saw this quoted online, "I always knew there was more to him. I just never pushed." Marcus read that while drinking coffee at Rena's kitchen table. He put the phone down. He drove to Mountain West Animal Urgent Care and he walked in, and Jordan, who was coming off his overnight shift, looked up from the desk and said, "They're all doing great," and pointed toward the back. The mother dog lifted her head when Marcus came into the room. She was in a clean kennel with the 3 pups. The male was in a separate warming kennel with monitoring equipment and the world's smallest feeding tube still taped to his face, but his eyes were open, fully open, looking at Marcus with the unfocused intensity of a creature who has just discovered that the world exists. Marcus crouched in front of the kennel. He said hello. The pup pushed his nose against the front of the kennel. Marcus opened the door and put his hand in flat, palm up, the way he had learned to do on the highway with the mother. He waited. He did not reach. He let the pup come to him. The pup walked onto his palm on legs that were still figuring out how legs worked. Marcus held him up. The pup weighed nothing. He smelled like warm milk and something else underneath it, something that was only alive things, the specific smell of something that had decided to stay. Marcus held him against his chest the way he had on the highway, and the pup's heart beat against his palm in a rapid, small rhythm. He thought about the phone call to his landlord. He thought about the trailer. He thought about the fact that 5 dogs was probably insane for a man who worked retail and drove 16 miles each way to do it. He thought about all the reasonable things. Then he thought about the shoulder of I-90 and a mother who would not move, and the fact that something in him had pulled the truck over before he could think about it clearly enough to drive past. He was not going to overthink this. He had done his 3 seconds in the dark the night before, and he had put it all back, and now there was just this. A pup the size of a coffee cup with a heart that was beating when it had no real reason to be beating. A mother dog who had stayed. And Marcus Deal, who had his own version of that, who had done his own version of that in places no one knew about, who had pressed himself down and covered something valuable and waited in the cold for something he was not certain was coming. He knew what that felt like from the inside. He knew exactly what that felt like. He drove back to Rena's to get her help calling his landlord. The conversation was going to take some doing. He had already decided how it ended.